So I got me a new interface because my current interface, the PreSonus Studio 68, just doesn't have enough inputs and also not the features that I would need for my complete new setup with analog gear and, you know, picking up the amp sound, picking up the cab sound, all the microphones I got going on for my videos and whatnot. And today I'm going to unpack this and give it just a first test and my first impressions. So this is not an in-depth review or anything, so forgive me if this video is not quite what you are looking for. Again, Thomann, just they have the most solid packaging. They actually make you work for your stuff. Also, sorry for the not so great angles. As I said plenty of times, this room is pretty small. And this camera is already as far back against the wall as it goes. So, here is the box of the interface. So, I went with the Focusrite Scarlett 18i20 3rd generation. And I am weary, to be honest, because I did have a Scarlett a couple of years ago. It was the 6i6, but 1st generation. And I was not happy with that, to be honest. Even though at the time it was praised like crazy for being such a good value. And it kind of was, but the one thing that was most important for me, the recording DIs, that was awful with the 1st generation. It sounded destroyed, completely useless. But now since I'm working with the DI box anyways, that's not really a problem anymore. And with 3rd generation, I assume the preamps are also improved much more than from the 1st generation. And the reason why I went with the Scarlett instead of anything else, you will see in a little bit. Because there's so much to this stuff. Here we go. There it is. Scarlett 18i20 3rd generation. There are so many features that I personally need in an interface. For one, of course, enough inputs. I have this condenser microphone here. I have my lav mic. I have the DI. Then I have the torpedo, which sends the raw amp sound. And then I have a mic'd up cabinet. Although I will work on that setup some more in the future. So that's at least 5 inputs I need. Technically speaking, the 18i8, I think it was, would have been enough with that. But just to make sure that I have enough headroom to work with, just enough flexibility, I went with the higher tier one, the 18i20, just to make sure that I don't run into any problems quickly again. So that's the first thing. Another thing is I need phantom power on separate inputs. With the PreSonus series of interfaces, it only puts phantom power on all inputs, or none of them. I'm not quite the fan of that. With the 18i20, you can, it's split up into 2 halves, 4 inputs, and another 4 inputs, and then you can turn on the phantom power on either of these. So any mic, or also the DI box and the torpedo catcher, anything that needs phantom power just goes on those inputs, and everything else that doesn't goes on the other. Another thing that's very important for me is, of course, a loop back feature, so I can record the sound from my PC, from my system. And interestingly, it's not a standard feature still these days. There are so many interfaces that don't have that, and I think with today's standard, it should be. It just should come with any interface. What's also a bummer, some interfaces that have loopback feature actually take up some of the physical inputs for that. There was another interface I was looking at, I can't remember which one it was, and the loopback feature actually took up the first 2 inputs, the physical inputs of the interface itself. So when you recorded the PC audio, it would be on the same tracks as anything else that you put on these first 2 inputs. So that's useless for me. You basically lose these 2 extra inputs. So that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Your Scarlett experience starts here. So of course I'm gonna have to wait till probably this evening before I hook it up, because I still need my sound to work for my actual work today. There's a thumbnail right there. And of course there's a lot of stuff on here that I actually don't really need. For example, optical inputs or SPDIF I don't really need, a work clock. It's really mostly that I have enough inputs. Oh yeah, these knobs. I'm a sucker for good feeling knobs. That doesn't sound right. I retract that statement. But I guess you know what I mean. When knobs feel too loose and too easy to turn, they just feel cheap, and it's like you just look at them wrong and they are at a completely different setting, and I don't like that. Same with guitars. When tone knobs or volume knobs are too loose, I hate that. They need to be firm. So just the first two inputs actually have or are made also for instrument inputs. Everything on the back is either line or mic, which is completely fine because I'm not going to use this for instrument inputs actually. As I said, the iBox. It's a safer route to go. So there were some other features that were very important to me. Oh yeah, the monitor mix. So that I can set the input volumes, the input gain, as it needs to be for recording. But then after the fact, when I want to monitor to something in real time, that I can change the monitoring level without changing the input level. Because that's something that the PreSonus interfaces doesn't have. And I'm not a big fan of that because, well, when I want to record with miking up a cab and I want to monitor that cab sound, and then of course I need to set the input in a way that it's at a good level. But oftentimes I find with my old interface now that it's still too low in volume to really hear it through, also in the mix. Now this interface doesn't have a dedicated monitor level knob. Well, a volume knob, yes, but not the monitoring mix level. But you can do that in software. A dedicated mute button. Thank you. So good. Button for the alternative outputs, so output 3 and 4. The MIDI inputs I'm still gonna need because I will get me a new little MIDI keyboard with some control panels and knobs on it. And also two headphone outputs. That's really cool as well, right here. So I can use one for my 701s, which I often use for mixing, and especially the low end. Again, just checking your low end on headphones is perfectly viable, especially when they are open back. The low end will be nice and even and clear. Low end in a home studio room will never be good. At least not to the point where you can dial it in just perfectly to the T. Headphones are a better solution for that, in my experience at least, and in my humble opinion. And then I'm gonna need the second headphone output for my closed back headphones, which isolate the outside sound much more, which is then good to monitor the mic'd up cab sound. So you see that there's a lot of stuff going into this, and I looked at so many interfaces. A lot of them have some features but not the others, and then other interfaces have those features but not the others, and really the Scarlett series was the only one I found that has all the features that I actually need. Some of which I wish had a dedicated knob on the front panel, but at least it's all available in software. So now let's peel off the plastic covering, shall we? It's okay. The experience is okay. A little bit janky. It's definitely a tougher feeling plastic covering, but okay. And it's the next day. So before I hook up this new interface, I want to test something very, very critical and crucial. With my old interface, the PreSonus, on the two XLR inputs on the back, I have like two shorter XLR patch cables and they are stuck. Okay, I tried everything I could try to get them out of there, but no, they are just stuck forever to be ingrained into the whole system, and that sucks. And I want to make sure that this one is better in that regard, or if cables do get stuck, then well, I want to make sure it's shorter patch cables and not uber long 5-meter mic cables, and if things do get stuck, then I'm gonna get me a whole bunch of more patch cables. So that's definitely something that's absolutely awful about these combo jacks. They like, why don't they make proper latches on here so you can actually properly unlatch these plugs? It's beyond me. So you know what, let's just try this out on the last input here, input number 8. Let's plug this in and see if we can unplug it again. It's weird that you have to do that kind of test. Okay, plugged in. And hey, it comes out. And pretty easy for that. Well, not easy in the way that it's stuck very loose in there. You would think this is a stupid thing to test, but it's an actual problem. But no, these are all good. Hey, I'm glad, so no need for patch cables anymore. That's cool. Alrighty, then let's get to setting this thing up, which means I'm gonna have to unplug this interface right now, the old one. Which means I'm gonna have to get back at all the cable management to get these 2 patch cables that are stuck in there out of it all. Yeehaw. Now here we got my old interface. Of course now it's just camera audio because this is not hooked up. The new interface is not hooked up yet. And you see these 2 patch cables here, they are just stuck. They will not come out. I already opened up this thing and looked at these input jacks from the inside, but they are completely encased input jacks. So there's no way to kind of open things up to loosen it up, but it's just no way to get them out of there. So yeah, that's that. But a friend of mine, he said he would still be interested in this interface, so that's gonna go to him. What's also weird about this one, goodness, here, look at this little rubber feet. They used to be right there smack in the circles. I have no idea how they wandered around like this. And the glue gummed up all the stuff on the back here. But hey, still good quality interface. It just doesn't have the features that I need. What? My goodness, I hate being spammed like this. What's so important? Muted. Now, on to hooking up the new interface. There's always a hassle. I feel like a car mechanic down here. I'm telling you, hooking everything up is gonna take way more time than anything else. Okay, I'm done hooking it up. I'm sweaty, but now let's also set everything up. Okay? Well, yesterday evening I still installed the drivers and a Focusrite control and just hooked up the monitors to see that it's actually putting out sound. So that all works, so I'm pretty confident that it all works. Hey, I still forgot my reamp box. So let's turn it on. Of course, I gotta check that everything is set to exact same bit rate and sample, or bit depth and sample rate, so 24 bits, 44.1 kilohertz, and then turn off this exclusive mode. That's important. But this is interesting. So in Windows, it only shows you the 2 front inputs, and also for playback, just the 2 main outputs. Perhaps it's something I still need to set up within Focusrite control. See, because this one only by default shows up the first 2 inputs. So let's add all these other inputs. Well, you know what? Let's just try out. See if my left mic. I can already see here input 5 showing something, even though the knob is all the way down. Great. Test. There we go. We got a signal. How awesome is that? And it's already playing it back through the speakers, which I do not want. Turn off all the monitoring. So now let's open up Cakewalk again. Okay, great. Of course, Cakewalk is pretty stupid at labeling the inputs. You have input 1 left, input 1 right, and then input 1 in stereo, which is actually input 1 and input 2. So input 1 right is actually input 2. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So now I'm looking for input 5. Yeah, there we go. There we have a signal. Which means now I can record myself again. Yeehaw! Yeah. So there we go. That's that. And I suppose I need to dial down the volume here a little bit so the input doesn't get bloated. So let's see, we got a little volume meter here, so let's make sure I don't hit 6 dB too much, but rather around minus 18 dB. I wish that there was one light for minus 12 dB. That's usually kind of a sweet spot for recording, so you have enough headroom. Okay, this seems to be fine. This seems to be much fine. So now let's check out this one. And this one needs to go here. And this is input. Hang on, let me stop recording again. This is input 6, which means in Cakewalk, input 5 to the right. And this is also giving me a signal. Great! Let's look here, input 6. Let's boost the volume a little bit. Hey, this can actually go quite a bit high. Ooh. So there we go, a little bit lower. So I'm about at the same level as with the left mic. Then in post-processing I don't have any problems. Now we can record again, and right now I'm recording with both mics at the same time. Yeah. So that's pretty neat. You know what, let's lower the input of the condenser mic just a smidge, since it's a bit more sensitive to loud noises. And well, I talk pretty dynamic. Usually at the start of a video I talk very loud, and then at the course of the video I go low and low and lower, because I kind of lose my joy in speaking very quickly. So that works. That's great. One thing I do want to check real quick. I gotta turn off recording again for that. Great. That's the loopback feature, which is very, very important for me. And I already saw that, and that's pretty neat. Here it just gives you an extra input that's called loop, which literally means an internal loopback, and it doesn't take up any of the physical inputs, so that's great. Just set it to stereo loop 1, which means now when I play any kind of audio, then it will show up. So I got the signal there. Cool. So that's all working. Okay, now let's do a little bit of first testing and getting the levels dialed in and see how everything sounds. Okay, so here we are now. First of all, I want to set the input of my DI box. So that's going to input 8. And I like to monitor that input with TH3 because it shows you here this green region. So you want to have your pick attack at around this green region. Okay, there it's clipping. And the input gain is already all the way down. So that's interesting. Let's see here. Which gives us a little bit more headroom. Although, well, that's still okay. Without the pad, turning it all the way down, then at the very least I know where it's supposed to sit. Nah, it still clips a little bit too easy. Yeah, something like this. It's not too much of a problem if it clips just sometimes. It would only ever happen when I'm actually playing riffs that are supposed to be reamped anyways. But for clean stuff, that's not a problem. So that's okay. But there you can kind of see, it seems like Focusrite still has this problem of having too high of an input gain. But I could also try out the gain reduction on the DI box. It's again a reduction of minus 30 dB. I think that's more intended for line instruments instead of guitar instrument. That's interesting. I gotta make a couple of recordings for this to see what's the best setup, because I'm not sure if any of these settings actually also change the quality of sounds. Okay, let's first test out the DI box just straight into the interface without any gain reduction, any pads. Okay, now I want to turn on the pad on the input and just raise the input level a little bit. Okay, we can already compare these two. I don't hear any difference there, just the slightest bit of volume difference, which is to be expected. Now I turned on the gain reduction on the DI box, turn off the pad on the interface and crank the volume. Okay. Now we can also check about the gain, the noise level. So let's get Euphoria in here. Turn off the noise gate. There you see in the third sample already, using the gain reduction on the DI box means I need to raise the volume on the interface, which adds more noise from the interface preamp. You can hear this very clearly compared to the other one. So yeah, I think I'm just gonna keep it simple. Leave the pad off and just turn down the input volume all the way. That way I do get enough signal. That little bit of clipping now and then isn't really a problem. Excuse me. See here, let's take a closer look at this. I mean, at what spots is it clipping? There. It's tiny bit. Here it's not clipping. It's clipping over here. No, even here it's not clipping. See, this is not too bad. This tiny bit of clip on individual hard strums that will go through a distorted sound. Anyways, that doesn't make a difference. That's not a problem. So I can keep that as it is. That's fine. Now let's go for the torpedo capture sound. So that's going into input 7. Gonna turn off this again. So now let's switch this to input 2, which is input this. Okay, now it's getting kind of ridiculous. In Studio One, it's called input 1 and 2, which are now actually routed to input 8 and 7 on my interface. It would be kind of cool if you could rename the inputs of the interface in software. So instead of calling it input 8, I want to call it DI box. Then here in Studio One, it wouldn't show me input 8, but DI box. That would be a bit clearer in the end. So, but now here, I'm gonna just check it in this mixer. Can actually barely see what it says. Oh, that's minus 9 dB. Okay, let's actually record some samples in this project. Okay, and compare this to the previous recording with the alt interface. Yeah, it's just a volume difference, but not a tonal difference, and that's good. So okay, I can work with that plenty well. That's good. So that is set up. And now for the mic'd up cab. Hang on. So. Okay, this is kind of awkward. I got the SM58 in front of the amp right now. Although, yeah, I don't have it really cranked, the volume. So, but still, the SM58 is pretty low output mic. And I have to turn the input gain very high, in that like last 10%. But in that region, the sensitivity is very low. So you turn it just a little bit and the input gain spikes up a whole lot. Now what I can also do is do this. I mute these monitors just with the press of a button. That's awesome. Then I can turn on mix control. And now just for my headphones, these ones right here, I can turn on monitoring for this mic now. At least in theory. This is analog input 3, yeah. You know what, let's set this to all. Ah, I understand. Let's keep it at that. Okay. See, still getting the hang of it. Now I hear it. So you see, I can turn this volume all the way up that I'm getting from the mic in front of the cab. And I can turn down the system volume. So I get a nice balance inside my earphones between what I'm hearing here in the DAW and monitoring the mic. Yeah, exactly, something like this. Although for this I would still have to take out my close-back headphones. Though I want to get me some new close-back headphones for this specific purpose, because the AKG K271s that I have for this are not quite up to par anymore, in my opinion. Okay, and there we have it. Now I pretty much set up all the inputs. So I got on 3, the microphone, 5 and 6, which is actually kind of good that I did it this way, because 5 and 6 is oftentimes in programs paired as a stereo input. So now I know 5 and 6 are the 2 microphones. And then 7 and 8 are from the guitar stuff over here. It's the iBox and Tobii captor. So that's cool. That's something I can work with. You know what I still want to show you? Here, look at this. This is actually pretty cool. With the Focusrite, with the Focusrite drivers, it adds this little tab down here. When you click it, first of all, Windows Sound Panel. It actually brings this thing back, which for us music guys who want to work with their inputs and outputs on their system is kind of important. But Windows was so smart to completely just not give you a chance to look at it. You either had to go right click on this and then on sounds, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And then here you can go on playback and recordings and do all this stuff. But now here it's just there. What's also interesting is, as I said before, here with your recording inputs in the Windows settings, at first it only showed analog 1+2, but you can actually manage this stuff when you go to expose and hide Windows channels. You see, and then on here you can activate all your inputs or all your outputs however you want, and then they will show up in your Windows settings, and then they will also show up in any kind of video chat program that you might be using. I'm pretty happy with this thing so far. It's actually, I was kind of worried about Focusrite control, but it is pretty straightforward. I don't have much complaints here with this. Video done. Have a good one.